righty, here we go. Good morning again, folks. How you doing today? You having a good time? All right, what did you think about that keynote speaker last night, Sharice Davids? Have I reminded you she's from Kansas? All right, I want to extend a special thank you to Peter DeFazio, who was our link to making sure Sharice came out here. So a big thank you to Pete DeFazio on that. Quick reminder, I'm going to remind you a couple times to make sure everybody hears when we have the Secretary of State's debate in this room. The doors will open at 11 a.m. Debate will start at 11:15. So just keep that in mind. 11, doors open, 11:15, the debate starts. All righty, so welcome all of you to the breakfast. And I am sure you guys are excited as I am for the legislative update we're going to have today. Yes, indeed. So we're going to do that sponsor thing, and to get through it fast, I'm just going to name the sponsors, and you're going to all give them a big yelp at the end. That way you can wolf down your eggs and drink your coffee too. All right, these folks are great. You've heard them before. You heard them again. We're going to ingrain them in your mind because of how important they are to making this event and making democracy work for us in Oregon. Senator Ron Wyden, IBEW Local 48. AFSCME Council 75, the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua Tribe of Indians, International Association of Machinists, International Union of Painters and Allied Trades District Council 5, personal whoop whoop, King Estate Winery, Morel Inc., NGP Van, Oregon Education Association, Pacific Northwest Regional Council of Carpenters, SEIU, Local 49, Senator Mark Hass, candidate for Secretary of State, and UFCW, Local 555. Now, let's give them all a big whoop. And as you know, you can find your additional pod sponsors on page 8 of your special souvenir program. All right, and once again, a big thank you to our volunteers who have donated their time through this entire weekend. You know, recognize them by their purple name badges and give them a big thank you. So, again, you may see the press here, especially during the Secretary of State debate, pink badges for identification purposes. And those yellow badge people, you know who they are. They're our wonderful DPO staff. If you see them, notice, you know some of the folks, give them a big thank you. It's because of the staff that this has been such a great event. So DPO staff. All righty. So, where's Travis? There's Travis. So I introduce to you our great DNC member, the incomparable, the lovely, Travis Nelson. Yeah, I did hear.
Oh, okay, all right. All right, good morning, everybody. How are we doing? Good morning. So I'll jump right into it. Barbara Smith Warner, a fierce advocate for gun safety and gun violence prevention. Barbara Smith Warner represents House District 45 in the Oregon Legislature with tenacity, courage, and conviction. In the 2019 legislative session, she was chair of the Joint Committee on Student Success, which passed the landmark Student Success Act, providing dedicated, stable funding for early learning and K-12 education for the first time in a generation. Everybody, please give a warm welcome for Barbara Smith Warner. Yeah, thank you.
Good morning, Oregon Summit. Woo! Thank you to my friends at the DPO for giving me the prime speaking space at first thing on Sunday morning after the big dinner last night and all the parties. But seriously, thank you so much. Thank you, Travis. Thank you to the DPO. Thanks to everybody who attends this event. You know, truly, nowhere but Oregon do you get the opportunity to spend this much time side by side with party activists, with issue advocates, with elected officials from all across the state, city, county, federal, and spend a whole weekend talking policy, talking politics, and how to make the world and our corner of it a better place. So I came actually to the first, I was counting the other day, I came to the first 7 summits in a variety of roles, from a precinct committee person to staff for some of our great Democratic leaders. And then after missing the last 2, I could not be more thrilled and honored to be here as your Oregon House Majority Leader. So thank you to the Democratic Party of Oregon for creating this space. So in my new role, I am here to talk about some of the highlights of the historic legislative session that wrapped up earlier this year, without stealing too much thunder from my friend Senator Rob Wagner, who will be coming up after me, because, you know, House leads, Senate follows us. But before I do that, I did want to do another just little point of information that I wanted to bring out is I wanted to give a quick shout out to all of my members who either are here now or have been here over the course of the weekend. So let's hear it for Representative Mark Meek, Representative Rob Nose, Representative Sherry Scouten, Representative Andrea Salinas, Representative Paul Evans, Representative Julie Fahey, Representative Carla Peluso, Representative Marty Wilde, Representative Pam Marsh, Representative Karin Power, Representative Tana Sanchez, Representative Jennifer Williamson. And I also want to give a little shout out to Representative Rachel Pruzak, who was going to be here, but wisely chose to stay in Portland with her stomach bug. So I think we can all thank her for that. And in case you were counting, me and all those members, over a third of the House Democratic Caucus came and engaged in this weekend. So it just is a reflection of the value that we truly place on this weekend. So thank you. So, the House Democratic Caucus, Team House D, as I was just mentioning earlier, we started this session with something that we call the Pledge to Every Oregonian, where we committed to tackling some of Oregon's biggest long-standing challenges. And despite Republican efforts to derail the session in both the House and the Senate, they did plenty in the House too that got a little overshadowed by the drama in the Senate, we succeeded in doing some pretty incredible things. So we passed the Student Success Act, we passed stable funding for Medicaid, we made significant reforms in support of affordable housing, including the first statewide rent stabilization law in the country. We passed paid family and medical leave. We strengthened civil rights legislation for communities from LGBTQ and communities of color to our immigrant communities. And we passed meaningful environmental policies, from banning offshore drilling and doing a moratorium on fracking to finally increasing safety for oil trains. So, why did we do that? Because in the 2018 election, we heard loud and clear from Oregonians that they wanted game-changing legislation to improve our state and tackle those long-standing problems. So that's what we did. I have to brag just a little bit on the student success. I'm not going to spend my entire speech on it, but when you spend a chunk of your life traveling around the state and meeting and hearing from all of those folks, it was just so incredible. And knowing the people that had been doing that work, trying to establish that dedicated funding for decades before me, the honor of getting to lead that work, it will never go away. It will last as I believe the most meaningful thing I have been involved with in my legislative service, and one I couldn't have dreamed when I said, oh man, my kids in public schools, I got to get involved in this. The idea that I was able to be involved in that with all of my colleagues and all of those folks and fierce advocates who stayed engaged on that for year after year is amazing. So give all of yourselves a hand on that. So 15 months of public input and a statewide tour that brought us to every corner of Oregon. The House Democrats were the first to pass the Student Success Act, which will make those game-changing investments in Oregon's public schools. After Measure 5 and 50, We finally used our supermajority to make corporations pay. That is the source of the dedicated funding that will put $1 billion a year into early learning and K-12 education, and tie those funding to outcomes with the ultimate goal of not only stabilizing and creating an ideal public education system, but closing those opportunity gaps for our historically underserved students. So that was a pretty big deal. But we didn't overlook higher ed as well. Higher ed, we did record funding for higher education. The $2.2 billion budget included a significant increase in our need-based financial aid program, the Oregon Opportunity Grant. That's going to mean 2,500 more kids are going to get that and be able to afford to go to college next year. Thank you. House Democrats also continued our longstanding commitment to stable, quality, and affordable health care, you know. Early in the session, the House passed House Bill 2010 to protect Oregon's Medicaid expansion and the health care it provides for Oregon's families, including 400,000 children, as well as seniors and people with disability. We also voted to increase transparency in prescription drug prices, to regulate the middlemen who are driving up the cost of those prescription drugs, and to require nonprofit hospitals to prove that they are providing adequate child care. Shout out to Rep. Salinas on that front and Rep. Nose on some of the prescription drug work. So as we continue to grapple with our housing affordability crisis, we passed a package of bills and record funding to begin moving the dial for vulnerable Oregonians in both urban and rural parts of the state. In addition to statewide rent stabilization, this included more than $350 million in funding for renter resources, homeless services and prevention, affordable housing preservation, and housing supply and homeownerships. And let's not forget about working Oregonians. House Democrats led the charge on a lesser-known but critically important bill called PECBA, which stands for the Public Employees Collective Bargaining Act. What it does is it writes collective bargaining best practices into state law, which is going to protect the rights of public employees for decades to come. The House also passed the Workplace Fairness Act, which protects Oregonians from workplace discrimination and harassment through a number of provisions that level the playing field between workers and employers. And as I know we have talked a lot about this weekend, we joined just 6 other states in the District of Columbia in establishing a statewide paid family medical leave insurance program. Woo! Ensuring that no Oregonian will have to decide between paying the bills and taking care of a sick loved one or a new baby. We also righted some historic wrongs in civil rights and criminal justice, including the elimination of mandatory minimum sentences for juveniles and making it easier, to get old marijuana convictions expunged. And we finally passed the Equal Access to Roads bill that will allow all Oregonians, regardless of their immigration status or ability to access certain documents, to be able to get a driver's license and be the contributing members of our society that we need. So what might we have left, you might ask? Well, as we look forward to the 2020 session, we will start the conversation with one of our biggest disappointments, which is House Bill 2020, the Clean Energy Jobs legislation. It is vital that we do our part to attack global climate change, and the House voted to do just that. Right now, incredible legislators like Representative Karin Power, who is hiding here somewhere, from Milwaukee, are working hard to move that legislation forward next year. The world is in agreement that climate change is real and human activity is causing it. Now it's time for us to do something about it. Sadly, we share a chamber with too many right-wing extremists and legislators who are more interested in serving corporate special interests than Oregonians. I gotta tell you, I sat next to the new House Republican leader at an event earlier this week, and at this meeting she said, "They have to quit calling us climate deniers." And I'm like, well, Christine, I'd be happy to do that when your members stop denying that climate change is real and that humans are causing it. So let me be clear, we are truly in a battle for the heart and soul of our nation and our state. As the Republicans proved during the legislative session and have proved every day since, they will stop at nothing to stop our progress. They will hold up the normal order of business. They will walk out of the legislature. They will negotiate in bad faith. They will outright lie. And they will go to work to circumvent the will of the voters through destructive recall efforts. Now, if you were here for breakfast yesterday, just down the way, you saw a video message from Representative Tiffany Mitchell that was taken just before she donated a kidney, right? Amazing woman. So right now on the North Coast, Representative Mitchell is facing a recall attempt funded by extremists masking themselves with the AstroTurf label of the group Timber Unity. In reality, who is this? It is Portland millionaire Andrew Miller trying to buy himself cover for closing mills and killing jobs here in the state. And guess who's running? Guess who's running the Timber Unity, the supposedly grassroots effort? Oh, that's right, it's our good old friend, Representative Julie Parrish. Yeah. Former! Thank you. Oh, the ghost of Prozac just punched me in my other kidney. So what did Tiffany do that was so wrong, you might ask? Well, for goodness sake, she stood up for the people who elected her, and she voted with their shared values, from climate change to education funding to access to mental health services. She represented the votes and the voices of those folks who just elected her not even a year ago. So now right-wing extremists are trying to tell the voters in House District 32 that, oh, your votes didn't matter. We're just going to go ahead and initiate a recall on this. We are fighting hard right now to counteract their efforts and ensure that this ridiculous Republican tactic does not become the norm in Oregon, because it is becoming the norm all across the country. I think the people in this room pay a cursory bit of attention to national political news, and you hear this is a tactic they are using all over the place. When we can't win, we are going to try to circumvent the will of the voters in our own way. We cannot let this get a foothold in Oregon, because unfortunately, like some other odd tweaks we have the amazing in our voter laws, like automatic voter registration. We also have the recall, where it will take fewer than 5,000 signatures of voters in her district to activate the recall. So please remember, I put the sticker on and I think it fell off on my way over, but please text Tiffany, that's TIFFINY, to 484848 to find out how you can help. But truly, just to finish up, when you get past the drama, this year has been one for the history books. We have accomplished so much together, and there is so much more left to do. From climate change to further action on gun violence prevention, we know that we can only move forward together. Next year, the House Democratic Caucus will have 38 seats to defend, from forces that are vehemently opposed to what we are doing to move our state forward. We need your help, everyone in this room, and most of the people you know, to move in your communities, in our communities, from Ashland to Coos Bay, from Bend to Hood River, from Salem to Portland, all the metropolitan area. We need great candidates to file in every single district. We need help knocking on doors and spreading the message. And when we are able, we are going to compete for new seats, because every Oregonian represents the kind of solid progressive representation that the Oregon Democrats will give. I look forward to seeing all of you on the trail with me going forward, and I thank you for being here and giving me the honor to let me speak to you this morning. Thank you.
So Barbara Smith Warner is the embodiment of the Shakespearean description. Though she be but little, she is fierce. And it's very appropriate that Senator Rob Wagner is following BSW this morning, because in this past session, he was the chair of the Education Committee on the Senate side. And thanks to their combined leadership, it was a pretty good year for education. So, in addition to the Student Success Act, which the two chairs worked with Basic Rights Oregon to pass Addie's bill, which is named in honor of Addie Staub, an LGBTQ plus student who committed suicide. Addressing the alarming data from the Oregon Health Authority's teen survey, Addie's bill provides Oregon schools with actionable suicide prevention policy and requires that all school districts implement protections for our students. And that's not all. Rob showed his ability as majority whip and as the youngest member of the Senate leadership to by shepherding this bill to a unanimous passage in this highly divided Senate. Republicans can vote for education. Who knew? For those following education in this state, these victories don't come as a surprise. Rob worked for years for the Oregon teachers, faculty, healthcare workers, and classified professionals at the American Federation of Teachers, Oregon. And when he's not busy in the legislature, Rob is the volunteer chair of his local school board. And fun fact, while he was at AFT, he appeared on this stage as the lead singer and guitarist for the band, The Missing WMDs. So in partnership with the House, I know that Rob is going to move Oregon's progressive future forward. And I guarantee you that unlike the Senate Republicans, Rob Wagner will never walk off the job. So please join me in welcoming Senator Rob Wagner.
Let me just adjust this microphone from where BSW left it. Is this going to become a morning roast? I don't know. We'll see. Let me throw down. Somebody I've known with great respect and friendship for over 20 years. It's great seeing you, my friend. Can we give it up for Eileen Kiley, who is on the front lines in our Oregon State Senate effort to win back 20 seats, what I call the walkout-proof majority in the Oregon State Senate. And on this last Friday, folks may or may not know that we are 365 days until ballots are mailed in her race, and a few more until I hope to be able to call her the senator-elect from the district from Central Oregon. I would also like to thank my Senate colleagues who joined us this weekend, Senators Fagan, Frederick, Haas, Manning, and Taylor. I see several of you here today. Good morning, sir. It truly is an honor to serve with such passionate public servants. You know, it's hard enough to run competitive elections, the time that you take away from your family, but to serve in the pressure cooker in Salem is something else. And I am so fortunate to get the chance to serve with senators with such passion and heart and grit. Now, we in the Senate and the House, we also know that we don't get to do this work without the sweat equity of every single person in this room. You truly are the backbone of the Democratic Party. So thank you so much. And as Representative Smith-Warner mentioned, the folks in this room working together with us in the 2018 election, as passionate and progressive Democrats, we fought to achieve supermajorities in both chambers. And elections have consequences. And for us Democrats in Oregon, that means positive change in the right direction. So thank you to your work, passionate and progressive Democrats. As you heard from Representative Smith-Warner with Senator Haas, are able to hold corporations accountable to pay their fair share of taxes. And after 30 years of disinvestment in our public education system, we are funding our schools so that our children can thrive. And your work as passionate and progressive Democrats, working those long hours, knocking doors in the rain, so that Senator Manning could author a bill that puts us on a pathway to provide health care for all Oregonians. Because as Democrats, we know that health care is a fundamental human right and is not a privilege for the few. And you, as passionate and progressive Democrats, gave the gavel to the hand of Senator Taylor, who led a coalition to pass one of those strongest family leave programs in the country. And you, as passionate and progressive Democrats, supported the chair of the Housing Committee in the Senate, Senator Fagan, who took on landlords on price gouging and protected the vulnerable from no-cause evictions, because she knows better than anyone that every person deserves a safe and secure place to call home. You, as passionate and progressive Democrats, provided Senator Lou Frederick, a lifelong leader in social justice movements. In the face of a racist president, you gave Senator Frederick the ability to tackle bias in our criminal justice system and to work with our Attorney General to pass bills targeting hate speech. Thank you, Senator. Now, before I share my perspective of what we face this session, and before I share a little bit about what we're up against this election and how you can help, I want you all in this room to take just a moment over your eggs and pastries to think about your why. Why are we all here? Why are you a Democratic Party activist? Why do you do the work on the front lines every single day? Because asking that personal question will fuel a movement that will help us win in 2020. My why actually starts in these rooms. In the early 1990s, I faced a severe health issue and I dropped out of college on the East Coast. But having grown up in Oregon, I moved home and I took classes part-time at Portland State University. And I got a phone call from a friend from junior high. And Kari asked me and told me, Rob, Bob Packwood is resigning in disgrace. You have to start the College Democrats at Portland State University. And that one phone call changed the entire direction of my life. From starting the College Dems to helping now Senator Ron Wyden, to within a year being elected to the secretary of the Clackamas County Democrats and a delegate to the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. That one phone call put me on a pathway to fight for workers' rights, to fight for students seeking to get an education, and now in the Senate with my colleagues toward an equitable and inclusive state so that everyone has a chance to participate in our democracy and that we don't ever close the door of opportunity. However, being behind the scenes for 20 years, it really wasn't until Donald Trump in the 2016 presidential election that forced me to come off the bench and into the game as an elected official. You see, the rise of Trump's overt racism and anti-Semitism in his campaign directly correlated to the rise of hate speech in our schools. At my children's school, there were swastikas being scrawled on bathroom walls. The N-word was being passed as notes to children in classes, and there were pictures of Jews being pushed into ovens. And during that presidential campaign and throughout it all, I kept thinking, he can't win. I mean, come on. I mean, Nate Silver can't be that wrong. And then on election night, 9:30 p.m., with the black shroud covering the nation, I came home early from an election night party, and I waited for my 13-year-old daughter to come home from dance practice at her junior high. And she walked through the doors, she looked at my face, and she just broke down in tears. And I went into our kitchen and I told her in a giant hug, Mia, I'll do everything I can do so that when I tell you you can be anything you want to be in this world, I mean it. And the next week we had a family dinner for my son's birthday, and my wife, my mom, my sisters, and my daughters sat on a computer and they bought plane tickets. And when they flew off to the Women's March in Washington, D.C., I started planning a run for our local school board. And now, as a local school board member, in the face of Trump's hate, I've worked hard to empower and embed diversity, equity, and inclusion into everything we do as a district. This last year, I worked with NARAL Pro-Choice Oregon to start the Progressive Pro-Choice Caucus with the Oregon School Boards Association and continue to support and press for curriculum for our LGBTQIA+ community. And as a family, we're now all off the bench and in the game. My daughter Mia, now 16, has joined the movement for sensible gun safety in Oregon. And my wife Lori is now a 2019 graduate of Emerge Oregon. And when Senator Devlin left the legislature after 21 years of distinguished service, and I won election to a seat, I've tried to take that same ethic and passion that started with the county Dems and the Carpenters Hall in Oregon City to the state Senate. And my colleagues and I know that we are not content from this last legislative session to rest on our laurels. We know we, in working with you, have a lot more work to do. And as Rep. Smith Warner highlighted, with the supermajorities you helped us to achieve, we were able to deliver on some of our highest priorities. But we did that in the face of a reinvigorated Republican opposition. In the Senate, they pulled out all the stops. And I think it's really important to note that this Republican Party in the legislature that we now face, they are not in the mold of a Tom McCall or Mark Hatfield. They are quickly and rapidly becoming the party of Trump. And what we saw last session, similar to our president, they don't fight fair. They'll exploit every loophole, even tucking their tails and running away to Idaho when they can't win in a straight-up fight. Yeah. When we wanted to fund education, they ran. When we wanted to pass budgets that support children and seniors and provide pathways out of poverty, the Republicans hid. They hid. And from out of state, they whined on Twitter about being bossed around by a democratically elected supermajority. But we ran on our values. We ran on supporting students. We ran on battling our climate crisis. We ran on housing affordability. And when we got there, we governed. We listened to our constituents. We exercised our constitutional mandate to pass policy that reflected the values of the majority of Oregonians. Now, there's a great scene in the movie The American President. Do you guys remember that film? A little bit? Okay, of course, everybody in this room, bunch of political nerds. And so Michael Douglas is president. He's sitting in the Oval Office with Michael J. Fox, who plays the senior policy advisor. And their pollster says that the president has a 63% approval rating. Now that sounds like fantasy. They say, "Sir," the quote was, "Sir, we may never have the opportunity like this again. Let's take that 63% out for a spin and see what it can do." And after waiting for years, we took that supermajority out for a spin. And I do believe, as Representative Smith Warner noted, that this will be a landmark session in Oregon history. It will be remembered that way. But now we're back in the interim, back home, and people are coming up to me and asking me, what was it like being in the Senate Democratic Caucus this session? First thing I say usually is, what happens in Fight Club stays in Fight Club. But I have to be honest that after this gut-wrenching end of session, the only way I could put it into context was by using a metaphor. So here goes. We're the Senate Democrats, and we're rafting the Deschutes River. We have 18 people in our boat, and we're a big team with a lot of different values, and let me tell you, we're in there, and we are hitting each other with our oars. Folks are falling out of the boat. We're trying to pull them back in. We're crashing into rocks. The boat flips once when we tried to fund our schools, but we got it turned around. At the end of session, I have to say, despite our wins, I don't think we fully charted that river. Because we look up, and it's a Class 5 rapid called the 3/5 quorum, and we all went over. Now, with this arcane quorum requirement, Oregon is now one of only 4 states that has a 3/5 supermajority conduct the business of state. Union boards, corporate boards, school boards, 46 other states, and Congress. It is a simple majority to conduct business. And this goofy provision was borrowed when we copied our original Constitution from Indiana in the late 1850s, before the end of slavery, before suffrage rights for women, before the direct election of U.S. senators, and even before 18-year-olds could vote. So when the Republicans took off in the wake of mass shooting after mass shooting, they took sensible gun safety and safe storage with them. And in the face of our global climate emergency, they stole landmark climate legislation. But let me tell you a little secret. We're not giving up. We're getting back in the boat, and we are going to add some more oars. In the Senate, this election cycle, we have a shot to get to 20 in 2020. And with your help, we're going to get it done. If they don't want to show up to vote on critical issues for Oregon families, with 20 Democratic state senators, we're just going to take the raft right around them. Now, I've spoken a little bit about the why. You've heard today and all weekend about the what. So let me close on the how. Our races in the Senate. We're bringing back Senator Taylor, Senator Dembro, Senator Burdick, and Senator Frederick. We're going to hold Senator Hass's seat in Beaverton. We're going to hold in Gresham. We're going to hold Senator Roblin's seat on the Central Coast. And in this cycle, we're going to pick up Salem, and we're winning this seat right here in Central Oregon. And some of these races are going to be determined by just a few hundred votes. So a strong ground game is going to be vital. The stakes are high, and we need you now more than ever in this election. Then, collectively, we can hold the Republicans accountable, from Port Orford to Prineville to Pendleton. And when they don't show up to work, it won't matter, because we will be there fighting for Oregon. So my little pitch, go to OregonSenateDemocrats.com and sign up for our actions alerts and give us a few shekels. You know, we could use some money, because it does matter. And I will say, we heard last night that the eyes of the nation are on Oregon. And when we win back the presidency in 2020 and we flip the U.S. Senate and we hold Congress, the ideas and policies that we pass here will help chart the course that Senator Merkley laid out last night. So when that phone call happens, just like what happened to me 20 years ago, I hope that you answer the call. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, my name is Pete Lee. I'm the Vice Chair of the Democratic Party of Oregon, and I have the honor and pleasure of introducing our next guest. She was born in Chicago and raised in New York City. Her parents were educators and activists. Standing up and speaking to power is in her DNA. She got her bachelor's in journalism from Howard University and went on to serve as the AFL-CIO's PAC coordinator and then Senator Joe Biden's deputy political director. In 2008, she was the deputy campaign manager for Senator Kay Hagan, beating Senator Elizabeth Dole in North Carolina. Prior to her current role, she served as Vice President of National Outreach and Training at Emily's List. She also served on the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, seeing firsthand that the growing influence of money in elections was leaving women and people of color behind. She is now the National Political and Organizing Director of the Democratic National Committee. Her experience in progressive politics for over 2 decades and grassroots organizing, I am confident, will help us elect Democrats up and down the ballot. I'm honored to welcome our next guest, Muthoni Wambu Kral.
Thank you. Good morning, family. It's so lovely. I am so excited to be here, and I am awake despite the time difference situation and the quick turnaround, because I get energized by rooms like this. I honestly do. Look at how packed this is. This is incredible. And I just want to say thank you so much to KC. I want to thank Brad. Thank you so much. I want to thank Molly and Candy for this invitation. I want to thank our fabulous DNC members for the warm welcome and for always making me feel like I am a part of this Oregon family, which, by the way, I kind of sort of am. So, and I'll tell you why. Before I came to the DNC in April, I worked for Emily's List, as was noted, and shout out to the Emerge women. I'm going for the cheap cheers. Let's go. Who have totally been my partners in so much of the work. But I was the Western Regional Director for Emily's List at the state and local level, where I worked for almost 10 years. And so I am no stranger to this state. I have seen a lot of friends in this room. And no, I'm not from the West. I'm not a fifth generation anything from anywhere, but but this was a chosen home for me. I moved to Seattle to carry out that role, and this was a real joy because moving to the West was a choice because I saw opportunity. I saw so much opportunity to move to a place where the invention, where the lab was happening around progressive politics. And I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to see that up close. And I did. So I asked for that role. And not only was I excited before I ever tasted my first Oregon blueberry or swore fidelity to, Pacific Northwest salmon, but I knew when I landed here that I was in a place where leadership was really happening for our country. And it's sometimes when you're in it, it's easy to take it for granted. But I'm going to remind you of a couple of things that really struck me, especially because during my time working out here, I was always working for a national organization. So it helped me to always see not only what was happening in the states, but then how that was impacting our national ecosystem. And I just got to tell you that when Kate Brown got elected as governor, and when one of her earliest pieces of legislation that she passed was signing our nation's first automatic voter registration into law, that was a big damn deal. Do you know what has happened since then? 15 states, plus the District of Columbia, have followed that. Today, AVR bills have been introduced in 39 states, and it was the heart of the ambitious historic reform bill, H.R. 1. Remember that we had that earlier in January in Congress? Well, voter reg and all of this that began here in Oregon, it has had an echo effect. It is a big deal to be the lab. And a lot of what you are doing is having an incredible impact on our democracy. So I know that none of this is possible without the sweat, the grit, and the gradual gains that Oregon Democrats have made. I mean, despite my youthful appearance, I've actually been doing this for a while. And I remember how we had to fight. I remember 2010 and how devastating that was. I remember the fight of 2011 and 2012. I sat with Tina Kotek, and damn it, I came here the week before my wedding, pregnant, knocked on doors with Val Hoyle, knocked on doors in Shamia Fagan's district, because that is how committed I was to winning back a Democratic majority, a real Democratic majority in the Oregon legislature. And it worked. You did it. You did it, and then you did it again. And you're going to continue to do it. This supermajority is making a difference. And it is incredibly important because when you've been there before and you've seen 6 seats just go away just like that in one cycle, you've got to remember that we need the padding, We need to build out our numbers, but we need more progressive champions being able to really run these bills through so that you can continue to innovate and help to lead our country into a new place. And we know that we can't wish for a majority. We have to work for a majority. I know you all have some incredible folks already sitting in office. You have some big gains to make. Brad is a really strong champion around the needs of what this party has in front of it for this cycle. We have seen what it is that you are trying to do when it comes to organizing. You have some incredible pickup opportunities. I know that is true. And we want to be right here with you. We know that we are going to come back for that Secretary of State seat like nobody's business. We are not leaving Republicans that be that close to our votes, are we? We know that we are going to continue going after CD2 until it's ours. We don't care that it's the great white whale. We're coming for it. And we are going to continue electing great Democrats up and down the ballot. It makes a damn difference in people's lives. My gosh, this list that you just went through, I just sat here like a fangirl. I'm like, oh, you know, and I live in DC. I mean, it's not that I don't live in a place where progressive politics are taking place, but it's just really exciting to hear all that you all are accomplishing out here. And I got to tell you, as a mom, you know, anytime gains are being made in education and making education more accessible and affordable, where people who are often paying college tuition for your 4-year-old, you know, to be someplace safe and to be starting to learn early, it's incredibly, incredibly important. So we know that it's critical that our Democrats are on the front line of this GOP agenda. I look around this room, I see folks like Ellen Rosenblum. I mean, I couldn't be more proud of our Democratic attorney generals right now. They are so fierce, and they have literally been the difference. They are suing this guy. They are suing this administration. They are not afraid, and they are thinking more strategically than ever. They have come to us at the DNC, and I have had people like Ellen and Maura Healey in Massachusetts saying to us on voter protection, it's too late if we've got to sue. So they are working with us now as we, you know, get together with folks like Fair Fight, Stacey Abrams' new program, and we start thinking about voter protection with this big lens that we need. We need a long runway. We've got to be really smart about how we are going to protect our votes. These guys are going to be desperate, and they won't care. They don't care. And we need our AGs, we need our county and municipal officials, many of them who administer elections on the ground. We have got to be thinking together, all of us strategizing, and we are doing it. And I am so grateful to have these kinds of great partners with us. So at the DNC, this is also why we are investing in a 50-state strategy. We are not focusing on engaging our voters and our communities just in the on year, but in the off year. We are no longer going to be the party that is not active in every zip code. And we know that we need to do that not only inside of the DNC and with the folks that we are hiring, but for constituency by constituency. Some of you have been there in the meetings where I talked about my first 3 hires when I came to the DNC in April. They were our rural political director, our labor political director, and our interfaith director. 3 communities that have oftentimes been, of late in particular, felt really distant from our party, and where we're not giving up one iota of that relationship. We all live in that space. We have Democratic voters in that space. They are our family. They are our Democrats, and they don't deserve to feel abandoned. So I am excited to be working with all of you. And And Brad knows this. He has access to these folks. We are thinking together about ways to help these folks. I see Sam here from ASDC, to think about the ways that we are going to work with our state parties to help our resources at the DNC, our constituency engagement directors, be our constituency engagement directors, because we're all running on limited resources, aren't we? We've got a big presidential field out there. Even our own funding is not looking like it was last cycle. It's just a fact that we have a lot of the money right now is going to these candidates. And so we have to be smart. We have to streamline. We have to be really strategic about our precious resources. But as a part of the 50-state strategy, we increased funding for every state party by 33%. The DNC previously only provided $7,500 a month to each state party, and under Chairman Perez's leadership, the DNC has committed to an enhanced $10,000 a month. We doubled down on our 50-state infrastructure, pouring nearly $30 million into coordinated campaigns and state parties during the 2018 cycle, and $145,000 of that came to Oregon. Our DNC investments have contributed to victories in previously deep red congressional districts and helping to flip the Senate, helping to protect our House majority, and really looking at this map holistically. And we are doing that in all of our investments that we have been talking over and over and over again with our state party partners. It's not easy. We're making a lot of really hard prioritization decisions. And I'll tell you, a lot of that is having to be driven by the presidential campaign, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of our candidates are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They are spending a lot of their time in the early states. What the heck happens then, though, when we need general election infrastructure in these states that make up the path to 270? It's not there. We saw in 2016 what happened. I got yelled at in rooms in Michigan, but that was okay. They hadn't been able to sit down and really talk to the DNC about how abandoned they felt as a state. And we are having those conversations early now so that our nominee hopefully doesn't have to have that, so that by then people have seen us. They have seen our organizing. They have felt us there, and they understand that we are not taking these states for granted. So, but it takes time. We are trying to use this runway that we've got to really create an elongated general election for our eventual presidential nominee. And doing all of that while also making sure that we are helping to work with our partners to ensure that states like Montana that have all of their statewide elections up in 2020 have the help and assistance that they need, or that states like Arizona, which are trying some new things like hiring a Native American organizer early. But you know, when you haven't had that before, you need a longer runway to some of our communities. So working to do that with folks. These are the kinds of things that you see the DNC doing right now. And in a lot of these battleground states, you know, Trump and that entire administration is decamping in those states. And they are trying to broaden their map, and I don't take for granted that they won't be here too. If they went to New Mexico, they damn sure are gonna come to Oregon, where you got almost as many non-declared voters as you do Democrats. So I get that. So we are very aware, and we are looking out over the entire landscape here and trying piece by piece, strategy by strategy, to really be smart about our resources. And the most important thing we needed to do was make sure that we had a nominating process that people could believe in again. We knew that the transparency of this nomination process was literally going to be sort of the first test around our own credibility as a party. And it's not like our folks distinguish between the DNC, the DCCC, the Oregon Democratic Party. We are Democrats. We represent you. You represent us. We all hold this brand together. So we had to make sure that from everything that we were doing, from the rules around the debates to how we've been onboarding candidates, y'all, it's been like Groundhog's Day, I swear to you. When I'm sitting here, we say the same exact thing to each candidate. I sat there in meeting after meeting, put my little table tent up there, and said the same thing to each wave of candidates as they came on board. And then we've done the same process for those folks who have been leaving. And we have actually heard from some of them that they really felt like they were treated fairly by the DNC. And we're really proud of that. So I know we saw the fourth presidential debate, and people are like, okay, when y'all gonna narrow this thing down? And I'm like, oh, no. No fingers on the buttons. Big D democracy. Welcome. So we got 12 of these, maybe less as something changes, but we have maintained our commitment to this process. And we have been able to do really cool things, like use these debates as organizing moments. We have been able to go to places like Ohio. Ohio, I mean, they just have felt left over and over and over again. And to come there and to be able to infuse the energy in with this last debate was such an important moment. So much so that we decided to do 18 organizing events in 1.5 days. And you know what Chairman Tom Perez did? Every single one of those damn things. Because he understands the commitment that he has made to this party. And he walks into every room. I've just not seen it. You know, we all sometimes, you have a boss where you're just sort of uniquely impressed by certain things. And I am uniquely impressed by the fact that he really works hard to give this all he's got. And it's not an easy job. And we may not be doing everything right. And we accept that. Our job is to listen and to get the feedback and to try to do some course correction and to work with you all. We are a democratic family. And we have a big responsibility on our shoulders, don't we? Because your job right now is to be dating candidates. Like, this is the cool, fun part of this whole thing, okay? I loved the straw poll last night as I stood by as an aggressively, totally what do you call it? Unbiased, bystander to see that. But I love that you all were doing it. This is supposed to be the fun part. And you're supposed to be falling in love with candidates. But at some point, we are going to have to unify around our Democratic nominee. And that part is not a game. It's a big responsibility. We know the crisis that we're in. We're all sort of doing our own thing to sort of mentally maintain right now. And I think that gatherings like this are really important. I think that we have to keep each other strong, that coming together in community is really important, that he has weaponized exhaustion. And this is exactly part of the plan. So we've got to keep doing things to keep ourselves highly energized, highly motivated, and focused on the real goal, defeating this damn president. I will share with you before I leave a couple of the ways more that the DNC is preparing for this. We are doing a lot of things earlier. We talked to the folks on the 2016 campaign. We've talked to people way before that. I've shared with you. I've been doing this a while. So I've talked to a lot of political directors going back. We're trying to be as smart and informed as we can about the things that went wrong and the things that have been great before, making sure we don't miss it. And we have been testing a lot of our planning and sitting down with partners and being transparent about what it is that we're doing. Things like making sure that we are helping to fund some of these voter protection directors early in these states. You know, states like Michigan, where the rules have literally changed, but voters don't really know a whole lot about that. So we need, again, that longer runway to be able to do things like voter education. We are doing things like funding all of these organizers in 7 of our battleground states who will hopefully be the workforce that a nominee walks into from July forward, or if something happens before that. But can you imagine that runway between July and November? You're in a big state. You know what it takes to scale up on staff, how incredibly difficult that can be during these presidential cycles when we also have competitive U.S. Senate races, House seats that we've got to hold, Democratic legislatures that we need to flip in time for redistricting in 2020. We have a big Democratic agenda to get done. We need people. And we need time to train these folks. I'm so proud of our Best Practices Institute and the fact that they are now at 13,000 activists trained. That is amazing. So we started something called Organizing Corps, where we took college juniors and then trained them and then had them working over the summer We had folks, they knocked over 10,000 doors in Milwaukee, in the Milwaukee area. People were a little confused, frankly. They didn't know what Democrats were doing at their door this early. They thought maybe there was an election they had forgotten about. And we were like, no, seriously, this is just the new way we're trying to do things. Have a long, continuous conversation. But it was also really informative for a lot of our local elected officials. They got a lot of that feedback at the door, our young organizers did, and they shared that back with their local electeds who, frankly, they don't have the bandwidth to have folks at the doors right now. So being able to do things like that is really starting to soften the ground. We are, as I said, we have hired this incredible workforce inside of our own DNC. People like Teresa Sheldon, who is my Native American political director. She comes out of the Tulalip tribe in Washington State. She is also a leader on environmental and climate change. I like to say she comes from the original climate champions. And I am excited to have her tribes leading our environmental and climate crisis work at the DNC. I am excited about the folks like our Mujeres Mobilize, relaunching that program for our Latina outreach, our Seat at the Table program, which is our African American outreach, and we've now joined it with Chop It Up, which is our Black men's outreach program. So we have been really, really thoughtful about all of this. I'm just naming a few of our constituencies. Our disability work is about to be on fleet because we are heading to Iowa. We are about to put a bunch of organizers and do historic investment in disability organizers in Iowa. I'm excited about that. So I tell you, we have a lot going on right now. I hope that we are making you all proud. You certainly make us proud. Keep up the work, keep up the energy, and thank you.
If there's ever any question in the room, I think we know the DNC is on the same page with us. Thank you, Mathone. That was awesome. Every level, every state, every county, every precinct. Right on. Okay, I get to do infrastructure again. So, and what I'm going to ask you to do, too, is we're using this room for the Secretary of State's debate. So after we get done here, please take your coffee and your conversations and all your gear out as quickly as possible so the great staff here can get everything rearranged because it's a bit of a puzzle. So thank you also, Senator Wagner. House Majority Leader Barbara Smith Warner. She loves it when I stretch that all out. You guys are great. What awesome work you all have done and will continue to do. Okay. Lanyard lecture. Remember, if you're headed out of here, please find a basket to dump your lanyard in. If you would like to actually save your name out of it, you can. You can pull it out. It's legal. And if you'd like to take those little parts of it, it's okay. Return them. We're recycling. We believe in recycling. Once again, reminder, this is on my notes all the time. If you see press, they have pink lanyards. It's a thing. Okay, so the final workshop panels will start in about 10 to 15 minutes just outside here. Let's see, and they will be held in the Heritage Rooms and rooms in the Homestead. That's a little bit different from yesterday, so find a volunteer if you need help getting there. Workshops are, they've been great all weekend. Have you liked the workshops? Yeah. Okay, so the panels for this morning: Solidarity Forever, the generational fight to protect unions. Abortion Forward campaigns, winning with reproductive justice values. Reproductive justice values, I'd say so. What's next on clean energy jobs? 2019's unfinished business. New and innovative campaign communication strategies. So you have a few minutes to chat and catch up, but you're going to do it out there, out of here. I'll see you for the SOS debate in your room. Seminars. All right. Thank you, everybody.